Have you asked for a pay rise this year? And if you did you get it? I'll be taking you through the why, when, and how you should ask for a pay rise. And if you hang on till the end, I'll give you a structure that you can use for the next time you have a review to give you the best possible chance of increasing your salary. Hi, my name's Eva and I'm on a mission to help you build the confidence and skills to go after the career and life you want. Let's start with why you should be asking for a pay rise. To make more money! We all obviously want to be earning more money, but you won't often get a pay rise the very first time that you ask for it. I'm a firm believer that managers should be paying close attention to the team and rewarding their most valuable players and compensating them accordingly. Unfortunately, if you're not one of the lucky ones with a manager who's already doing that, it's possible that you will have to make the case and advocate for yourself. Now, we know that men ask for pay rises way more often than women do. So if you're one of the women who's not asking for pay rises, just think about over the course of your career, you could be costing yourself tens of thousands of pounds. So it's really important that you do make that case for yourself. Now, I'm going to caveat this whole video with, you don't deserve a pay rise just for doing your job. Your job is what you're already being paid to do. So if you're going to go after a pay rise, make sure that you're adding more value to your business. If you're not sure what on earth just happened there, you just witnessed your first money dance. It's a wonderful Greek wedding tradition where your whole family and friends line up and give you rows of money that they pin to your outfit. It might not be that easy to get the money from your business, but I hope to give you the tips on how to. Let's go on to when you should ask for a pay rise. Now, it's always important to be aware of what is happening in the business, how the business's finances are, and how they're performing before you go in and ask for more money. Especially this year, a lot of businesses have suffered with the pandemic, so they've had to put a lot of people on furlough, they've unfortunately had to let people go, and a lot of businesses have shut down. So it may not have necessarily been the best time to ask for a pay rise. However, there is a small subset of businesses that even did better during the pandemic. So if you're in one of those and you know that the finances are pretty transparent in your business, make sure that you take that time and you prepare your facts before you go in. And here's the thing, you need to do your research and be very well prepared before you go in and make the ask. I'll share a little story with you. So the very first time I ever asked for a pay rise, I went in and said to my manager that people in London doing my role are earning this amount of money and that's where I want to be. And I felt quite prepared in that I'd done my research, and he laughed at me. And I hope he sees this and smiles, because he has now ignited a fire in me that loves negotiation. He laughed and just said, "Where did you get that number?" And that just made me feel humiliated, like I was completely unprepared. And I said, "Oh, well, I looked on Glassdoor and this was the salary range for that role." I gave a range, not one specific number, but I said I wanted to be within that range. And he said, "Well, that data is just the data that people input themselves into Glassdoor and it's not really accurate." And I didn't really have anything to come back with. So if you are going to use something like the market rate, make sure you look at companies that are a similar size to you, within a similar location, with a similar job description, and then look at what they're offering for new jobs that they're advertising, rather than what people may have put into something that they're posting themselves. You'll normally have 3 types of opportunities where you can ask for a pay rise. The first is when you're taking on more responsibilities within your role. The next is when you have your annual performance or career review. And finally is when you're going after a new job with a different company. I'll be making a separate video of how you can negotiate a new job offer. So let's start with the first 2, your annual performance review and when you're taking on more responsibilities. Most businesses, particularly larger businesses, will already have a process in place where they will review your performance every 6 months or every year. If your company doesn't have those in place, make sure that you ask for that meeting. You're entitled to feedback on your performance, for how you can improve and how you can grow within that role. Don't use that performance review as an excuse to wait and delay. I know the conversation might be uncomfortable and you might not necessarily get the result that you want straight away, but you do prime yourself for a better opportunity at the next review or next time you get to talk about your salary. Now that we've covered the why and when you should ask for a pay rise, before we get to that structure for how you should be asking, let's look at some of the common things people say that are a terrible way to ask for a pay rise. So here's a little montage on what not to say.
Well, I've been in this job for 5 years now, so really my salary needs to go up.
Why have you been here for 5 years? Can you not get a job anywhere else? You could have been there for 1 year, 5 years, or 10 years, and if you're still doing the same job and you're not doing anything differently, not driving any additional value, not exceeding the expectations, you don't actually deserve a pay rise just for doing that job. So it doesn't matter how long you've been there. My rent is going up. Food, so expensive. Your personal finances are none of the boss's business, and your business shouldn't really care. I mean, you don't go into a restaurant and ask for an extra upgrade for free just because your rent is really expensive and going up this year. So use that same logic when it comes to asking for a pay rise. It doesn't matter how expensive your city is or how expensive transport is. It has nothing to do with why you should be asking for more money.
So I spoke to Mary, and Mary's earning this much, so that's what I should be on.
Be very careful with this one. In some workplaces, it's actually forbidden to disclose your salary to anyone working within the company. So make sure you're not bringing that into the conversation. But it also doesn't matter. You getting paid differently from your colleagues could be for any number of reasons, including they might be a better negotiator, or they might have a slightly different job description and be adding a different value. So only focus on yourself and your achievements and what you can bring to the business.
If I don't get a pay rise right now, I'm out of here.
Now, are you bluffing with this one, or are you actually ready to walk away and go find another job if they don't give you the money that you think you deserve? Now, from a manager's perspective, if someone said that to me, I would think that their loyalty is no longer with the business at all. Now, it's very different if you've received an offer for a lot more money and that's an open conversation that you want to have with your manager. But the way that you approach that is not threatening to go. It's saying that you want to stay with this business, but you believe this is what you can get within the market. And can you bring your salary a little bit closer to that because you want to stay? So make sure you're not going in with any threats. I think even if it works for a short period of time, ultimately you're probably not that happy in the role anyway. Now that we've seen what you shouldn't say, let's look at what you can say instead. And the focus is really these three things. Number one, what value have you added to the business? And try to quantify this. So have you met your targets? Even better, have you exceeded those targets? And if you have, don't go into that meeting talking about all of the ways that you need to improve. It's great to focus on self-improvement, but your annual performance review where you're asking for a pay rise is not the place to do it. The next thing to mention are any additional responsibilities that you've taken on. So have you trained anyone that's new to your team? Have you worked on a project that wasn't directly part of your responsibilities? And when you're talking about that, show that you've been very happy and very grateful and that you're happy to take on more, but really you just want this to be compensated. Finally, you should go in and ask for a specific number. Now, we don't need that number to be ridiculous, and if it's something that is way outside of the market value, then don't even bother because you won't have a good opportunity to get a pay rise that matches that. But if you're looking at maybe between 5 to 10%, depending on how much additional responsibility you're taking on, then that's a reasonable ask to make. So here's an example of what that ask could look like. You could say, I'm proud to have been part of the company's growth over the last year. I have exceeded my targets by 20%. I've also taken on the additional responsibility of training new members of our team. I'm very excited to continue to be part of this growth and take on more responsibility, and I would like this to be reflected in my salary with a 10% increase. You might not get exactly that number, but at least you're giving your boss a little bit of a steer on what exactly you're looking for. So let's say you've done your research, you've done your prep, you've gone into that meeting and you've made the ask, and it gets rejected because of budget cuts or because your businesses are not making any increases right now. Don't be disheartened. You were prepared from the beginning that you might not necessarily get a pay rise the first time that you ask for it. However, it's absolutely fine to ask, what would warrant a pay rise? What milestones would I have to achieve so that we can have this conversation again in 6 months' time or in a year's time? We tend to focus more on the negatives of where we haven't performed that well at work, and sometimes we forget all the areas where we have added a lot of value. And that's where it can be helpful to work with your manager and draft out a plan of what you need to do over the next few months. And the more quantifiable that is, the easier it will be for you to look at yourself objectively and make that case. And finally, what is my future within the business? Do I have the opportunity to grow and get to this stage where I want to be? And it's always important to consider that there may not be that growth potential within the current place that you're at, and you will have multiple options in going after new roles. So there you have it, the why, when, and how you should and shouldn't ask for a pay rise. I hope you can now ask for a pay rise more confidently. If you found this valuable, please like and hit the bell to subscribe for more inspiration, entertainment, and more importantly, practical tips for how you can go after the career and life you want.